Baseball is a game of moments.
These moments are so distinct, kept apart from each other. Each play takes about 12 seconds at most. And yet, it's the building upon of these moments, the way that one moment builds into another, and over the course of a game becomes. Oh, Jesus Christ. Moments build on top of each other to create games, and then games build on top of each other to create seasons, which create eras, which create histories. Histories that can span up over hundreds of years for a lot of clubs, and that history leads to a very intensive fandom, one that understands the importance of the singular moment as it stands. And when I think of it, I'm wearing a Padres jersey right now. This is the only MLB shirt that I own right now. I actually got it for free at a Padres game this summer, and I think of the way that the Padres, a team I don't know very well, I just moved to San Diego this year, have this back catalog over 40 years of all of their different moments that kind of affirm the franchise and its existence. And it's very interesting how just about every Major League Baseball team has its own distinctive historical moments like that. Well, I'll just do the narration here.
I grew up a Kansas City Royals fan. The Royals historically have been mediocre, with a few periods of excellence, one of which coincided with my parents' time in college in the 1980s, and one of which coincided with my time in college in the mid-2010s. The Royals' history is not atypical. It's actually fairly mundane among MLB fans, I'm sure, and honestly, the number of life-affirming storytelling moments in Royals history is fairly limited compared to that of the Boston Red Sox, San Francisco Giants, etc. However, they are there. Royals fans know what I mean when I point to certain names, moments, and plays in the club's history. Mike Moustakas falls over the fence into the Kauffman Stadium seats to catch a foul ball against the Orioles. Jared Dyson steals third against the Athletics. Jorge Orta maybe gets to first against the Cardinals. Bo Jackson throws out Harold Reynolds. Eric Hosmer gets home against the Mets. Separating these moments from context, they are impressive plays, and actually you could very easily separate them even further from context, reducing names and descriptions to simple scorecard numbers. In fact, I know my friend Mike, who generally keeps a scorecard, saw that Moustakas grab and would have recorded it with a quick mark of F5, appearing on the scorecard as just another putout, not unlike the 26 others recorded by the Royals in the game. And I give all this information, this context, to show the powerful nature of the individual play in baseball, and really to show that this power is what I love about baseball. Because that F5 on a scorecard, it serves its purpose. And so does the incredible 10-second athletic highlight of Moustakas extending himself out over the fence to make the catch and falling into the stands. But even those don't capture the context of the season. Like, I remember fellow fans around me in Kauffman Stadium yelling for Moustakas to be traded in May that year. The incessant questions of his effort and dedication to the team over talk radio and Kansas City Star newspaper columns, which built up game after game in the early season. Questions which he chipped against through excellent play after the All-Star break. Questions that he put to bed for good with a heroic effort play like that one. But if we zoom out even further, this moment had built upon so many others in a dominant playoff run for the Royals, their first in 29 years, and those 29 years had been notable if only because they were so bereft of even slightly remarkable moments. Save for the mercurial form of Bo Jackson, the playmaking of young talent who would develop into stars on better teams like Johnny Damon and Carlos Beltran, and the otherworldly performance of Zach Greinke in 2009, the Royals had been starved for anything sustainably remarkable after the 1985 championship. That was why, when, in 2014, breaks started falling the Royals' way, when that young talent made clutch plays, but in royal blue this time instead of the colors of a richer club, all of those moments came together in that 30-year context and pushed this incredible play by a young third baseman off of the scorecard, the diamond, the series, the season, and into lore, into legend. That is what baseball is at its best. Moments built upon moments become everything. I am not quiet about the fact that I enjoy and appreciate sports games. And when I find one that I really enjoy, I feel compelled to critically examine why that is, from where my enjoyment stems. When I think of my favorite sports games in history, I tend to like how they capture big things, rather than caring so much if they directly capture smaller details. NBA Showtime, for example, is one of my favorite basketball games, and I've always appreciated it for reflecting this sense of dominance from its best players, one I've felt in real life, which has been ratcheted to extreme levels in-game. Or take World Championship Soccer for the Genesis, a game that makes scoring goals this difficult, irksome campaign to the point where when one is scored there's this great feeling of accomplishment. Or how about when the pocket breaks down in NCAA Football 06, a mobile quarterback can turn sure-dead plays into unbelievable highlights in a way that only seems to come from the college game. Now that I've shown what I look for in a great sports game and what I appreciate about the sport of baseball, allow me to say this. Super Mega Baseball 2 is the best sports game that I've ever played. I played 4 basic 32-game seasons before I won a championship, which, if you're doing the math, totals a full regulation MLB season. I made the playoffs with each team, but each story ended differently. I had a blowfish team in my first season that just made it into the playoffs in the final game, then won 6 straight before getting swept in the championship series. I had an overdogs team that I absolutely adored playing with, but I fell just short in the divisional playoffs and lost a lead in a critical Game 5 to end the season. With the Crocodons, I lost the last 6 games of the season and completely flamed out in the playoffs, swept in the divisional round. Then, finally, with the Wild Pigs, I lost my first 2 games before going on a 16-game winning streak, then really dominating throughout the season, finishing 28-4, going 3-0, 3-1, and 3-0 to win a championship. Even on a microcosmic, personal, single-player level on my couch, I felt like a weight had been lifted off of my back when that final out was made against the Platypi and the championship-winning cutscene was played. And during that season, there had been so many moments that built to that. And let me give you an example. I subbed in catcher Tracy Wickers in the bottom of the 12th in divisional round Game 1 against the Herbisaurs, who got a clutch base hit to get Spanky Wagner at home and win the game. I had fallen behind early on and had to scrap even to get to extra innings. This felt genuinely cathartic. Keep in mind I had been swept in round 1 the previous season with the Crocodons, and after that sweep I basically guaranteed myself that I'd never play the game again, before starting up a new season the next day. I partially expected myself to fail, and Wickers was really my last offensive threat that I could have subbed in that game, so I really set myself up either to win the game with her, or stare right back into the void. And Stracy came through. I felt myself, tensing up during that game. I felt like I should win, but I'd felt like I should have won before, and I'd flamed out, and I knew that it came down to performance at one specific moment. Promise and potential had to turn into success by that sort of clutch performance, and when it did, it propelled a fairly easy playoff run that followed. It struck me as similar to when the Royals played their first playoff game in 29 years in 2014, a game in which they trailed for the majority of the game, only winning after that heroic third base steal by Dyson led to a tying run in the 9th, in effect proving that this snake-bitten team could indeed win in the postseason, propelling them all the way through to the doorstep of the World Series title. I felt echoes of that complex, historically constructed feeling that I developed over, at that point, 19 years of life, lived in the midst of 29 years of futility, which had come through the history of a 45-year-old baseball club, in about 80 hours played of Super Mega Baseball 2. That feeling of catharsis after years of futility, years of leaving the ballpark in disgust at another missed shot, that nervousness that comes from getting to the doorstep of greatness and knowing the difficulty of successfully knocking it down, it's something that this sport, a sport a few years older than the state in which I grew up, has a tendency to produce. Baseball hinges on an ultimate contradiction. It's a sport built upon hundreds of years of history, and that history changes in plays that take fewer than 15 seconds. When those moments come, you can feel it. You see faces change, bodies contort, hands rested on the top of heads in surrender. You hear the crack of the bat, the thud of a ball hitting a glove, the euphoric roar of a crowd when a hit lands in fair territory. But you feel the years upon years, seasons upon seasons, games upon games, moments upon moments that underline everything. And that is what baseball is to me. And Super Mega Baseball 2, in a way greater and more fully than any other sports game has ever done for me, captured and exemplified what that sport means to me. It's been very difficult for me to articulate what it is specifically that Super Mega Baseball 2 did for me this year. I don't think I've hinged on a game like this in a long time. It really set a bar for sports games that I didn't know I had. Now I find myself looking for games that get at the heart of a sport the way that this game does, and it's almost changed the way that I look at video games entirely. When and where am I going to find the basketball game that channels the feeling I got when my favorite team upset a dynastic Lakers squad and the best player in the league en route to the 2011 championship? When and where am I going to find the football game that channels the feeling I got when my long snake-bitten colleges team had an unlikely 11-point comeback in the final 6 minutes to push it to overtime against a Texas team they hadn't beaten since before World War II? When and where am I going to find the soccer game that channels the feeling I got when a young defender named John Brooks scored to get revenge against Ghana, or when star striker Carly Lloyd chipped the goalkeeper from midfield to cement vengeance against Japan in the World Cup? I never used to ask these types of questions of sports games, but Super Mega Baseball 2 is so excellent and echoing greatness that I have to now. It's partially changed the way that I view sports games, and I don't know if I can praise it in any way higher than that.
You